they were so happy. They were all gathered at Moore Street, Coburg, when I came home. Dick brought me home from the place. And
oh, they didn't go down to sort of see you, meet you?
No. Only Dick and one other person, probably Dark.
Why?
Well, my family were never, they were never like that.
Yeah, right.
My family were never, see,
so
when we sailed away, Kev, on the Mauritania, the world knew they were there. Now all Jack Henry's family went down there. My family didn't. My family saw me on long service on my final leave, and it was early in December. And I had final leave, said goodbye at home, and just went away to camp, but that was it. That was the finish of it. Now, fortnight later, I had another final leave because they didn't send us away at all. They changed their plans, and I heard the new plans of the new plans only a few weeks ago. But they changed their plans, and we had another final leave. But in that final leave, I had been home. I'd been through all the tearful periods of people, crying about me going off to war and maybe being killed. So I went to a retreat at Corpus Christi College for the weekend, and never let them know that I was away on leave, and afterwards, I just that would have been.
So you were just as guilty as him for not. I mean, you not wanting to.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to. I didn't want to go through the whole thing again.
All right.
So you say a tearful farewell, and all we will pray for, and all this kind of business, and then the next minute they're seeing you walking down the street. And so well, look, if I go through the same thing, you may be back next week. And I felt too embarrassed for that.
Right.
So I just.
Okay, so you came back, and everyone, they gathered at Moore Street.
Moore Street. No. At Ireland. See, my mother didn't live at Moore Street when I got back. She lived at Pascoe Vale South with Ireland.
Royal Parade.
So it was at Waverley.
Waverley Parade, yes.
Waverley Parade, and they were all gathered there. I was absolutely amazed at how old they'd grown while I was away. That's one thing that.
And so, what would the sort of the nieces and nephews, or your nieces and nephews, would they have been there then? Like Maureen and John and Frank and Dick?
No. The Christie kids would have been there because
Brian.
Because
Margaret have been born then? No, she would have been. Oh, just a baby.
Yeah, she's just a baby, I think. She was just a baby. I think that was war, man.
I don't think Margaret would have been. Not in 1945, was she?
I think so.
She's not 6 years older than me, is she?
No, I think so.
1945.
So anyhow, all right. So
I don't remember Eileen going to hospital to have any children after I got back.
she had two. She had Michael and Julianne.
Did she?
But
yeah, Michael, that's right. Yes.
Going on. So,
but remember that 5 years of the first 8 years that I was home, I was in hospital.
All right, with your ulcer?
So, yes, with the ulcer. See, I had 4 operations of it.
All right.
So I could have been at one time I was away for 10 months.
Actually, before that, it was the 4th of July, and we now move on to the 5th of July, 1991. So, take one, Jimmy eating cake on the 5th of July, 1991.
Early in the morning of the 5th of July.
And, because you can't have your cake and eat it, can you, Jim? So then you came home and you're in hospital for the first 5 years. Now,
No.
5 out of 8.
5 out of I had the first operation on the tummy.
Yeah.
When I came home, I was repatriated home.
Yeah.
With the duodenal ulcer. I went into Heidelberg Hospital after about 3 weeks or so, and my leave had finished, and then I was to go into hospital. Not specifically because I had a duodenal ulcer, but to see what I was what prisoner of war life had done to us. And we went into Heidelberg, and we, in the most amazing performance that you could ever imagine the army could be guilty of, they put us in with German prisoners of war.
Are you joking?
Not joking. We did the Ward 10 in Heidelberg Hospital, and in the back of it were the German prisoners of war. In the front of it, there were these returned British prisoners of war.
What were German prisoner of war doing
after the war?
in Heidelberg?
No, this is the war still on at this time.
Ah,
You see, this is the war. These are closing months of the war.
How did they get to
Well,
the repat?
they were the same as I was in an Italian hospital. They were
But I
sick
mean, you were talking
prisoners
about
of war.
Heidelberg,
Yeah, these were sick prisoners of war.
and they were repatriated right from Europe.
No,
Well,
no,
where
they
are
were
they
prisoners.
from?
They were prisoners, German prisoners here. Here. in
Oh,
Australia,
here.
you see.
You're not
They
They
were
were
German
interned.
prisoners here, and they were sick, and they were admitted to Heidelberg Hospital as sick prisoners of war, the same as I was in an Italian prisoner of war hospital in Italy, you see.
But they
It's the
were,
same.
they were,
Heidelberg.
you're saying they were Australian Germans.
No, they were Germans. They were Germans who'd been taken prisoner of war overseas and had spent their prisoner of war days here in Australia.
Oh, it's just a
See,
hell of a
Italians.
long way to,
Yeah, they did it though. They were Italians. They were, what about the big,
yeah, broker.
yeah, that's
well, they
right.
broke out. The Japanese. You know, they,
Yeah, but the Japs were on our doorstep.
no, well, these were on more than I this, but they were here.
Germans,
Yeah.
Germans were.
I know they spread them all over the world.
Mm.
They were in India, some of them were in Canada, America, they were all over the world.
So, okay, so then you were in hospital, in and out of hospital.
Yes, up to 19. I had 4 operations on the tummy for this duodenal ulcer.
This is a bit of a problem, this duodenal ulcer, isn't it?
Yes, it really was. Oh, yes.
Didn't they really know
But-
too much about it?
They did. They did know as much almost as they know now. Now, maybe not as much of the treatment, but certainly it should have been seen. But I came back, I came into Heidelberg Hospital, and they examined me, took a x-ray, all that kind of business, and then they pronounced that there was nothing wrong with my stomach, and I was going to soldier on and fight in the Northern War. And I said, but excuse me, what about the pain? And the surgeon, the senior surgeon at Heidelberg, he said, it is all in the mind, son. And it was a Sunday, and the charge sister, when they'd completed their whole round, the charge sister of the ward came in and she said, I want you to clean the ward. And I said, but sister, and I felt dreadful, oh, I felt shocking. And I said to her, sister, I can't clean the ward. I said, I feel dreadful. And she said, your trouble is that you are malignant. One of the things I regret to this day is I didn't haul off and smack it. I do really have a deep regret that I just didn't really crack her. I'd have been put on court-martial and I'd have had the whole of the papers all talking about it. And I really...
Because you'd already copped that treatment back
That's right,
overseas.
exactly. So I said, I'll clean your bloody ward like it's never been cleaned before. And I went round and I deliberately took all the heavy furniture and moved it and swept behind it and came back in. By that time my visitors had arrived, my mother and Lily and my 2 brothers-in-law, Lily's brothers.
Yeah, were you married at this stage?
No, I wasn't married. I wasn't even engaged to Lily. She was only a friend. And I said, look, I'm terribly sorry. I'll have to lie up on the bed. I feel shocking. And I lay up on the bed, and it wasn't long before I could feel coming. Thanks, Pauline.
Thanks, Pauline.
That's yours, dear, the one that I've heated 3 times.
This one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, thank
Yeah, you don't think
Yeah,
you're getting the fresh one.
Like I'll tip it
You
out
don't
and give
think
you
we're
a
in
fresh one.
No,
You don't think we're in Italy now, do you? Bloody fresh coffee.
Would you like another piece of cake, Peter?
No, thanks, fine.
What about
No,
It's lovely.
You didn't ask me for a bit if I want another
Well,
piece.
you know you can, if you want a piece, would you like a piece? No.
Yes, please, Paul.
You damn well eat it now.
I will. I will.
All right.
So, she said to me,
Excuse me.
so I said, I ran, I could feel this rule coming, and I ran very foolishly. I should have stopped there and vomited over everybody, but I didn't. I ran to the pan room and collapsed on the floor, and blood covered the ceiling, covered everywhere. And after, I couldn't sing out, I didn't lose consciousness, but I couldn't move from the floor, and I couldn't move. When I say I couldn't move my hand even like that. I'd lost all the blood. In fact, later report was that I'd lost that much blood, but they couldn't record how much I had left on their instruments. And then my brother-in-law, Stan, came in to find out what had happened. As soon as he saw it, of course, he ran back into the ward to tell them. And the sister who had called me a malingerer in the morning came in and said, "Good God, it's this little boy, that's complaining of the ulcer. He's had a hematemesis now. Hematemesis is a vomit. When you vomit blood, it's called a hematemesis, and that's a very severe bleed. So they got me. They took me into a special room. I almost suspect that they put me in a special room, big room, where nobody could see me. And then, of course, they all gathered, really, all the people who, and I said to him, "Is it all in the mind now?" I couldn't lift my hand. I said, "Is it all in the mind?" He said, "Of course not, son." And I said, "Am I sick enough to get out of the army?" And he said, "Yes, you certainly are." I said, "Well, put me out of the army immediately." I said, "I want to have nothing more to do with you." I said, "I was better treated in Italy," and it was true. I said, "I was better treated in Italy and Germany among my enemies than I am here. I waited to come home." And I said, "This is what I come home to." So I don't want any treatment. I wouldn't take any treatment. And they put the things in my arm, and it was almost enough to kill me to pull them out, and I'd pull them out, and they'd be like those balloons that you let the air go and they'd float around, and all this blood would be spurting everywhere. So I don't want anything for 40 hours there, really, nearly 48 hours, and I was just dying. I knew it, but I wouldn't give them a satisfaction. I really wrote them. I said, "Don't touch me." The girl that said I was a believer said, "Don't touch me. Don't even feed me, don't do anything. I don't want you to bloody believe it." I said, "Get out of this place." And for 48 hours, I kept them on tender hooks and trying to give me all kinds of treatment, and I wouldn't take it. And eventually, one of the doctors, and I thought he was quite, he'd done work on my varicose vein, that's right, but that's the only reason I was in the glass house up there. No, it wasn't Pendergast, it was a bloke in the hospital.
All right.
And he came in a very hot day, and he wandering up and down, and I said, "You seem agitated, doctor, what is wrong?" And he said, "You're wrong." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You know you're dying." I said, "You don't know that." He said, "You'll be gone in 2 hours, you've only got a few hours to live." And I said, he said, "What satisfaction are you getting out of it?" You know, I said, "Everybody in the hospital is wrong. Isn't that satisfaction?" He said, "You know, you go," he said, your mother and your friends and your sister and your brother have all been waiting for 4 years for you to go outside of prison camp and come home. Now you come home and now you're going to die, and just to prove that you will." I said, "You've already done, you can't do anything more." So I said, "And what do you want me to do?" He said, "I want you to take treatment." And I said, "Well, start." And before, within seconds, they were all waiting. When I got out, eventually outside into the ward, they told me that they were all lined up in the passageway, really rushing as a last resort. Anyway, I took the treatment and but they couldn't stop the bleeding, and I had to have an operation, and then the ulcer came back in 3 months, and I had to have another one, and then I had to
What
have
they used to
another
do
one.
when they used to operate on you?
What kind of operation?
Yes, did they used to cut into you?
Well,
Yeah.
they did, and that's what I'm suffering from today. That's why I suffer from the dumping syndrome now, but they have never, the medical authorities in the REPAT have never admitted it. They've never admitted that I have a thing called the dumping syndrome, and yet there have been about 4 doctors who said, I'm absolutely amazed they couldn't recognise the dumping syndrome from the circumstance that existed at that time. And an expert told me this. He said, of course, you definitely had the dumping syndrome, but I couldn't convince them at all. And so in 1953, I came out for 21 years from 1953 to 1974. Lily and I just had to battle our way as best we could with the dumping syndrome, which is a thing. How I first discovered it, I went out in 1953 to a Edmund store in the city. A present came to the girl. I was in the back room with the manager, and this young lady was serving me, and she said, what happened? I said, I suppose I came out of hospital too quickly. And she said, can I get you anything? And I said, yes, would you please get me a malted milk and a bar of chocolate? Now, I didn't like either. Yet I craved for sweet stuff. And I went back to the hospital by ambulance, and I said, told the doctor, this has got nothing to do with the operations. I said, it must have something to do with the operations. Must. But eventually I found out myself that it was the dumping syndrome. The very thing they said, the main cause of it is massive surgery on the stomach. I'd had 4 operations, so why they didn't recognise it. Anyway,
Why do they call it dumping syndrome?
I don't know, because you feel absolutely utterly wolfed down, dumped.
Oh, right.
I could be working out in the garden, all of a sudden my eyes would over and I would feel quite faint, and I could break out of the perspiration and then onto the floor.
Oh.
Unless I got inside and got sweet stuff into me, I just faint away.
So,
Yeah.
so then time went on, and where did you work? When were you discharged from the army then?
Yes, I was discharged from the army, and they suggested that it would be a good idea, seeing that I'd been in and was in such an agitated state after all these operations. It might be a good idea if I just got a job where I was sitting there just doing little routine jobs. So they got me a job in a watch factory, Handley's, J.W. Handley in Richmond. And I worked there for some months, and then Percy suggested that I go and start the accounting course with him. So then I
He was
worked.
a qualified accountant at this stage.
Pardon?
He was a qualified
Oh
accountant.
yes, he was a chartered accountant. And I went there and I studied and it would go quite well until the bleeds started to come back. And of course you as an accountant would realise that you have certain clientele. You know, Percy, I'd be doing something, Peter Kerr would be doing something else, Percy would do something else, he'd have his clients, I'd have mine, and you know, you'd go out on Thursday, you do their pay, you do all this, and all of a sudden Jimmy would disappear. You see, and nobody, it's not that they weren't competent doers, you know, full well, but they had, become used to it, and they knew what the routine was in that particular firm. So Percy and I got together. I don't know whether he made the suggestion or whether I made the suggestion, but it was made that it would be better for me if I were able to get out to a big firm that could carry me when I did get sick, and so then I then went to the SEC.
Right.
In fact, I had the last operation whilst I was with the SEC. You know, and they
And
carried me.
Did you say you worked at the dairy too? Did you say you worked at the Mount Dairy too?
At that's surely early in the Depression.
Oh, right.
Yes. Oh no, not after the war. No, I went straight from Hanley's to Percy's to the SEC, and I
Right.
finished up at the SEC.
Well, that leaves who next?
That leaves Dark.
Mm.
Dark.
So what have you got to say? What's your relationship with Dark? Dark was...
It's always been very good.
Mm.
I was always a protector of Dark.
Mm. Did he need protecting?
Pardon?
Did he need
Yes,
protecting?
he did, as a matter of fact.
Mm.
He did. He was the kind of person who'd go down to the creek and the Merry Creek. We'd go down Yabby, and you could bet yourself Dark would fall in the water during the day. If there was a splash in the water, you wouldn't have to turn around and say that's Dark in the water. You'd just run for your life towards him and take him out.
Mm.
That was Dark.
Yeah.
And yet he grew up to be very, very, assured. When he was 16 years of age, he answered for an experienced brush hand. Dark always wanted to be a painter. Experienced brush hand. And went along, and the bloke said to him, all right, give it a try, and he handed him a brush, and he said, start on that window over there, and Dark started the wrong way, if he should have been going up, he should have gone down, or he should have used one brush, he shouldn't have fitch or something, and the bloke said, you had a paper before, and he said, no, but he said, I'm willing to try, he said, give me a go, and he said, you needn't pay me anything, if I'm not, if I can't do the job, he said, give me a go, and I said, I'll give you a go. That's where Dark's painting career started at 16, and Dark was the only person who never did serve his apprenticeship at painting, but still became a member of the Master Painters Association. Only person in Victoria. Only person. A very, very competent trade. A very wonderful paper hanger.
Mm.
Very, very, very competent.
And what
Did Dark have any personality problems?
Problem. Well, yes, he did have.
could be
He
Dark?
did have. He did have personality problems. Dark. He was he married a woman who's much older than himself. But Dark needed that. He needed that. He couldn't marry. He couldn't cope with a younger person.
And how old was it? This is Auntie
Only Olive.
Olive, right?
Yes. I don't know what the difference in age was, but it was fair bit.
What, 10 years?
Maybe 8.
Mm.
Maybe 8. Yes. But he had real problems.
Mm.
Of course, he's a heavy drinker. Very heavy drinker.
Did you ever drink?
No.
Why not?
Well, I didn't drink, Kev. I'll tell you why I didn't drink. Because I went to a ball one night with the Seymour MS. And there was quite a few of them. 13 people at the ball, 13 couples. And it was at the Earl's Court in St Kilda. And I went there with little girl Patty Davis from the local parish, and at the end of the night I was the only one who was sober, but the rest of them couldn't dance at all, and I was dancing in rotation with these, and they were saying to me, look, I didn't come with you, you don't have to dance with me. And I thought, no, this is not my scene, I'll never go with the dance, and I never drank at all.
Mm.
But here was, as a matter of fact...
No wonder you got your blasted ulcer.
Yes, indeed. Well, I didn't drink and I didn't smoke, but I
With your bloody pipe in the pun.
yeah, really. But I never had any urge to drink.
Mm.
I'll tell you what, I think, really,
Did all your family drink?
yes, they all, Nellie didn't, and Eva didn't.
Right, no.
No,
No,
Nellie
they
didn't, and Eva didn't. Dolores did.
Nancy did.
But, no, Nancy didn't, poor Nancy didn't. But, no, I never had
She
the
got-
urge to do it. And I always think, really, that people who drink heavily, I'm not talking about social drinking, but I'm talking about people who hit the bottle, like Dark did, for instance, or the others, they lack something, The drink is a prop to them. I never did need a prop. I wasn't the kind of personality that needed a prop.
That's
I
because
never-
you're
I
in the
never-
bloody army. If you're in the Air Force, you wouldn't have wanted a prop.
Yeah, black. Could have been so. Could have been
Okay, so
But,
Dark,
Why did he get his name? Because of his...
pardon?
Why dark?
Well, Dark had black hair, Nellie had black hair, the rest of them were all red.
That
There
makes
were-
sense.
There were 9 children, and of course Dark always referred to me as Red, and
Yeah.
still to this day refers to me as Red, and I refer to him as Dark. See, Eva was the lawyer, because Eva knew everything, and she was the lawyer. She was not the lawyer when she was only about 12 or so, and
So
brother,
we'll-
brother Bill to the day died, he was the lawyer. To her face and away. Yeah, what's the...
so Dark, Dark was 3 years younger than you.
Yes, 3 years.
And what happened to him during the Depression? He didn't go off sort of wandering around like you or anything, or
No,
he
no.
had his painting.
Well, he
What,
was,
what year was he born? 1919,
1918.
1918. So he was
1918.
12, 14 in the Depression.
Depression.
16 when he sort of got the job, and that was
Job.
still the throes of
That
the
was-
Depression.
Yes.
The
yes.
Depression really went on to 1940, didn't it?
Oh, no, not really. We started to come out of the Depression in about 1935. We were the first country in the world to come out of it.
Right.
So we were coming out of it in 1935. So when Dark got his job, he more or less carried on with the painting.
Right.
You see, and from there onwards.
Is it, what's happened to Olive? Where's Olive now?
She died.
She
She
did
died
die.
some 2 years ago.
3 years.
3 years,
Just
was it?
before
3
we,
years.
just before we were married.
Did she?
3 years.
And Dark doesn't see any of his kids.
Not any of them.
No.
No, not any of them.
Now why?
Because Dark was a hard man with his family.
The kids are fairly bitter, aren't they? Obviously.
They are bitter. They are
You know,
bitter.
they just live just down the. They're in Ball. One's got the
right.
nursery,
That's
haven't they?
Terry. Yes,
Terry.
Terry and John are partners in the nursery
And
now.
have you been there? The nursery, have you seen
Oh,
Terry?
yeah, oh gosh, yes. I said Terry. Terry, I've got his number in the book there. Nirvana Avenue, North Baldwin. Is it?
Nevada.
Nevada. It's called Nevada.
No, Nevada.
Nevada Avenue, North Baldwin.
Maybe Nevada.
I rang Danae at one time, and she really, I think, suspected that I was trying to bring across some kind of rapprochement between the family and Dark. See, when she died, Dark said to Dark, you go to the funeral? He said, no, I can't be hypocrite like that. I was never, separated from her for years. Had never been near, had never been near the family. He did walk into the bank at one time.
Yeah, he told me that.
And he saw his daughter Tony, and he said, do you know who I am? She said, yes, I know who you are, but she didn't want to know.
Well, she was working in the bank.
She was working in the bank as a teller, yes, and he just walked in and, sidled up to the bloke and looked and said,
Oh, he knew she was.
He knew
Oh,
she was
yeah.
there. Oh yes,
Alright.
he knew she was there.
And why did they separate?
Olive and Dark.
Yeah.
Completely incompatible. That's about it. He was a drunkard. He was a cruel bloke. He was a kind of what's saying that he wanted his children to, if he thought that they had discipline, he'd just them on the top of a seat or something, and the table, so they stayed there for 2 hours or something.
I can remember him doing it to me when I was about 4 or 5. Getting me and belting me in with a pillow.
And
This was in Chelsea. He was obviously had a handful, and he got me, and he belted me. I'll never forget that. Belted into me.
No, that was Dark. He was
And,
a cruel streak in him.
I never forgave him for that.
No.
But that was incredible.
But so did Matt Stapleton, didn't he? They were getting up to... Matt Stapleton had a cruel streak in him too.
Oh, question. Oh, gosh. Well, he's still got a nasty streak in him, Matt. You couldn't say that. You couldn't say for a moment that either were likeable people, although Dark Duck all imagines he's a very popular person. He went up to Wangaratta, you know, up around the bush there
yeah,
where his
Albury.
stall is. Well, he obviously went up there from conversation I've had with him. He obviously went up there so that he would be in a situation where people want to flood up there and say, isn't this beautiful? And haven't you got a lovely place here? And he said to me only in the last, 6 months, Pauline, he would have said, I'm terribly disappointed. He said, people, you know, just seem to make a fuss when I invite them home, they never come home. And I've never been there. He's asked me a dozen of times, and really, to
My
me,
brother's been
have he?
there. Yeah.
Has he?
But I think he's sort of reasonably close, if that's
well,
the
look,
word to Dark.
I'll tell you what, Dark, of course, was very close with the Bolts.
Mm.
You know, he loved the Bolts. He really did. And he loved John.
Mm.
He loved John. John was a favourite lawyer. He didn't come there to John's hall. I can never quite understand why Dark wasn't there. John's birthday, remember? He's 50, wasn't he?
Mm.
He wasn't there.
I think you did ask him, but I can't remember what he
No, I can't understand what he
What
said.
was the falling out between Dark and
Agnes,
Ag? Yeah.
because
Well,
they didn't sort of really speak
well,
till your mum's funeral.
Well, Agnes and Dark were never close at all. Never close at any time at all. There was no, he might as well have been, some bloke that lived in Scotland and she'd remotely heard of him.
So what was the age difference there between Ag?
The age difference, well, Agnes was born in 1913,
13, did you say?
they died 1913. And I was
Dark in
born in 1918,
5 years.
so there's 5 different
Oh, right.
years. So Dark now is 70, he would be 70 what, 2?
No,
Yes,
he's
72.
turned 73, hasn't he?
Eh?
He was
No.
73 last birthday,
Well,
wasn't
what it was, I'm 75,
1913.
he's a 1918 bloke. October 1918, Dark.
1918.
1918,
He's
October
43 this year.
73.
And what was it? You don't know what the falling out was over, or they just never
With
were
Agnes?
close?
It was, once again, they weren't compatible. Dark, she didn't like Dark, she didn't like his behaviour, she didn't like his sexual behaviour at all, nor did I.
What do you mean by that?
Well, he wasn't exactly the most moral person in the world by any means.
Mm.
And I really mean immoral. He would like now, I suppose, to forget. He said to me at one time, he admitted to me with these misdemeanors when Olive came and complained to Percy and I. And I think this is where Agnes comes into it. Or Olive complained to us about his exam and that's when Percy and I came into it, you know, to kind of try and straighten it out. And of course Percy would have told Agnes, and Agnes of course would have, I think it stemmed from there, but they weren't compatible at all,
Yeah.
you know.
And so what did you say to Dark? I mean, what did you say? So Olive came and sort of complained that Dark had sort of been playing around.
Yes, and I said to Dark, I think the best thing you do is leave, get out. And he said, yes, I'll do that. And I said, all right, what you going to do? And he said, he's got a trade, he can get by, he'll be all right. And so he didn't get out. He didn't get out at all, and he never did make any attempt to go out, and I couldn't throw him out of his own home.
Mm.
So it was eventually all of course the boys were growing up at that time.
So
And
she must have had a fairly sort of hard existence to a certain degree, wouldn't she?
oh, she did.
With how many kids?
She
6.
had 6 years.
Where did they live?
They lived in Wellington Street, Kew. They lived in the
Wellington
place.
Street.
Really?
Yeah, I'll tell you, they lived in the place that
How long were they there?
Oh, years.
Well, I remember going there.
I'll
It
tell you,
in the
it was
50s.
a-
No, in,
Their
oh,
phone number,
no,
when they
it's
went
really
to, when they went to live there, their phone number was WA1000, which was the best known telephone number in the whole of Melbourne because it was owned by the Ridgeway carriers. And they used to rewatch them always, WA1000. And they moved into the house that was sold by Ridgeway.
So whereabouts in Wellington Street was it?
Do you know Edgware Road?
Edgevale Road, yeah.
Edgevale Road. About 200 yards up towards
Glenferrie Road. Or,
Glenferrie Road.
Well, that, you know,
just
that's
around the corner.
You know,
my
can
way.
I just sort of just go on from that?
Yeah.
That, you know, that's the Q Exchange, which is now 862, and my phone number at work is 8621000.
Go on.
What is
What an incredible thing.
It is.
Well, they wanted to take that WA1000 with them because it was so well known.
Yeah.
They wanted to take the thing away, but there was
moved
no,
out of the area.
it was different area and they
Yeah,
just couldn't
yeah,
take
they
it.
wouldn't
Ridgeway
get
was
it.
a different area.
862, you're right.
So-
862,
Go
1000.
on, isn't that incredible? It's that number.
Mm.
Well, that WA was Dark's number, and we used to have quite some jokes about it because
Because it was 81. W is
Dark,
W is 8 and X is 9. Y is
It's
0.
supposed to be 817,
Isn't it?
1000.
well, he used to. I remember being there at one time
Q's
when somebody
817
answered the
as well.
phone and
Yeah.
said, "Is that
That,
Ridgeway?" I said, "Yes. What could I do for you?" And they said, "We want to remove." I said, "Right, we'll be around at 9 o'clock." He said, "I was sick and tired of this number always going on to I want Ridgeway."
mm.
And I said, "Well, the Ridgeway don't live here anymore." And on this day, at all, so he stopped this one anyway. Because I used to visit Lily quite regularly for all of sake.
Mm.
So what was Olive like as a person?
Drab, but interesting. Human being, but that's about all. Had as
Mm.
much personality as the wall, you know.
You looked at me when you said that.
Yeah, good. I was going to say we could have it at 12. I think you were going to say it's
I was really,
Pauline.
I was
What
really,
interest did she have?
I was really trying to get an analogy between my term and Oliver. And I looked at the wall first, they call it.
How do you put up with him?
Good.
With great difficulty.
Mm.
It's difficult. But that's
This is
just
the,
you know. Mind you, his family's a very nice family. Darks.
The kids.
Oh yes. Oh yes, Terry's a nice bloke. Because he was president of the Nursery Goers of Australia. I was in Perth at one time and I opened up this confounded gardening book and there, glancing at me from the
Well, you're a big gardener.
front page, or nearly as big. And there it was, this bloke, Peter,
Terry George.
Terry George, and I said to the people over there, "Oh, it's mine."
Because one of them was killed too, wasn't it?
One of them was killed, Darryl.
Darryl, yeah.
was killed.
Was he?
He
What,
was-
in the
On
car?
a ship, no, on a ship in
Oh, he's the one that
in the-
fell over.
In the port, he fell over
In the port, yeah.
He fell over the port. I don't think anybody ever
He
knows.
got-
I think.
Well, he got Molly the Monk, I think, on the...
Yeah, I think
He
so.
was, yeah.
Yes,
Mm.
yes.
He was
I
just
think
mucking
so.
around.
But Terry's a very nice
Yeah.
cove. Danae, very nice. We met them at Olive's funeral. Jonna is a very nice kid. There's one of them.
John.
Yeah,
Alright.
Jonna. He's the other partner in the.
Oh, right. Mm.
See, they've got the two nurseries. One in Kew and another one in Rathmine Street in
Rathmines Road, Hawthorne, yeah.
Hawthorne.
And where's the other one in Kew?
In High Street.
Is it?
Yes, that's the bigger of the two.
Whereabouts in High Street?
I don't know exactly.
Gee, I've seen it too. Can't remember.
Oh, okay, I'll never look.
But
Because I'm in High Street, Kew.
are you?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, how long is it since you moved from Horror Street?
No, sorry, I work in High Street, Kew.
Yes.
I'm still in High Street.
Yeah.
Gonna get off the tree.
There's
There's Dark.
what? So Dark, we've sort of skimmed through, and now he joined the army, did he?
The Air Force.
The Air Force.
Became a sergeant in the Air Force. Got to New Guinea.
Mm.
Not to New Guinea, to Darwin. He's there, I think,
I thought he was in the Navy.
the Army.
Navy.
No. Oh, Dark was in the permanent Navy. Dark was in the permanent Navy before the war.
He joined the Air Force.
But he was in the was left the Navy in I don't know the reason why he left the Navy, but he did. He left the Navy, and then when the war broke out, see, he did then started painting, and went back to painting, and then when the war broke out, he joined the Air Force. Yes.
What was he? What did he do in the Air Force?
Ground crew.
Ground crew.
Yes, or I think he was drill instructor or something or other, but
So-
he was a sergeant.
Right.
Sergeant.
And he went to Darwin.
He went to Darwin. He got as far as Darwin,
So he didn't leave Australia.
but no.
Was he in Darwin when they bombed it?
Yes, he was in Darwin when they bombed.
So because he didn't leave Australia, does that mean he didn't get a sort of a war service loan or something like that? Is there any people who left Australia got that? Or?
Well, he would have seen action in Darwin.
But he was he was in a war area at that time.
Oh, right.
What time? You had to be in Darwin at a certain time.
Alright.
But Bill was in the army.
Oh, right.
Oh yes, Bill was in the army. The three of us were in the forces,
Mm.
but Bill was in the army. Bill got to New Guinea.
Yeah.
Oh yes. But Dark was he was in the army during he was in the Navy, the Air Force during the war.
But Frank Harden was in the Air Force, wasn't he?
He was, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So what?
Eva,
Now we're left with Eva. So Eva was your
little baby sister.
Baby sister
skin and
Eva.
blister.
Yes. Well, Eva, as you know, is a very sweet person.
The lawyer.
You know, the lawyer. She was Noel. You know, she was Noel and probably still is, but
Was she the first Noel?
she recognised, pardon?
Was she the first Noel?
The angel did say.
Oh, you're incorrigible.
Give that dictionary again, please.
Well, Eva, yeah, she was the youngest. She was probably spoiled. And,
We better get on to point two.
pardon? Well, what?
We better get on to the second point on this.
Fast ball over.
Yeah, Eva. So Eva was the youngest, yeah.
Yeah, youngest. And probably spoiled completely.
Mm.
But,
You weren't though.
I was never spoiled.
Mm.
No, I was never spoiled.
No, right, okay.
No, Dark was
Dark
spoiled,
was.
but I was never spoiled. No, I was never. I would say that I was never spoiled.
Yeah.
So Eva was really what? She was,
probably did came closest to spoil me,
Mm.
jolly me than anybody. But
Spoiled.
I was a bloody. Yeah, it was hard to get on with.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
was hard to get on with.
Yeah, we'll come on to that
You can
because I've got some
imagine
sort of questions to put to you from
Oh,
some
dear,
hard
dear.
ones, but
Well, what? Well, Eva.
back to Eva.
Well, Eva. Look, Eva hasn't changed a great deal over the years. She kind
Fairly,
she doesn't
was
ride,
fairly.
she doesn't ride that bike anymore.
No, she doesn't write that by. As you know, she worked in the dairies, of course, during the war.
But fairly
and,
sort of lively, sort of.
a good personality, Eva.
Yeah.
A good personality, and you could never, nobody could ever be justified in disliking Eva.
Mm.
Oh, she wouldn't have an enemy in the world, of course. You know, she was the kind of. Pardon?
She used to make a few up.
Well, you'd have to put up with that the way he has been over the years.
Yeah, she's been pretty good.
You'd have to be good.
Mm.
You'd have to have something very, very special, really, because he's been a bastard during the time.
Mm.
You know, I can remember going to Eva's, and she was 20. It was her 20th wedding anniversary, and I said, Eva, why the 20th wedding anniversary? Isn't it usual to have the 25th? She She said, we'll never see the 25th. We'll never see the 25th. Matt will drink himself.
Oh, right.
Drink himself to death long before the 25th.
Yeah, he really pulled himself out of the mire, didn't he?
I tell you, he got. I said to Eva, the last thing I left her, when I said goodbye to her, I was on final leave, and I said, I may never see you again, Eva. I said, I'll tell you, don't ever marry Matt Stapleton. Don't ever marry Matt Stapleton. And she wrote to me during the war. I never received the letter, but she said, apologising for the fact that she was going to marry him. She'd become engaged soon, was going to marry him. But I could see what Matt was really, and she didn't need my approval, but had she needed it, I certainly would have withheld it. But he, on this 20th anniversary, he was that drunk he didn't know that it was his 20th anniversary. And I think he was out in the car and he came in and his face was, there was as far as I can remember, that he had some sickness, but there was a discharge from his ear was running down his face. He looked absolutely horrible. And he finished up in Alfred Hospital with the sickness, whatever it was. And whilst they were in there, they woke up to the fact that he was drunken, that he was an alcoholic. And they said to Eva, we'll dry him out here, we'll keep him in here. And they kept him in there long after the illness was gone, and they dried him out. And he didn't drink again until the family, and to this day I think was absolutely stupid, and I can't understand how they could be so silly. They fed him on Riesling on the basis that Riesling wasn't alcoholic, you know, only a nice little drink for Dad. And when I saw him take the first glass of Riesling, I was a teetotaler, but I knew bloody well he was on the way back, because that's the very thing they talk about. You know, live by the day.
Oh, they had that.
Alcoholic.
He used to have that low alcohol wine.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
low alcohol wine.
Yeah.
But drink enough of it and you're up to high alcohol wine. And this is what happened, of course, he went back again. But then Eva, with her strength of character and her faith, she got him back again. And, well, it's to his credit in those respects that he doesn't drink now. But of course he's a diabetic, and the worst thing they can do is drink. He would have killed himself long before today.
How old would Matt be?
Matt would be
17.
Probably
Today's date, 4th of July, 1991.
72.
72.
He had his 70th birthday in 1989. Remember when you came out of hospital and you went to
I went there and you know, I'd just come out of hospital and I had that claustrophobia.
That's right. That was
after the
in
open heart
July.
surgery.
It's
That was
29th
after.
of July's birthday, isn't it?
Is it?
That was the day you came out of hospital.
Today's date being the 4th of July,
So he's just on
1991.
72.
5th of July, sorry.
Yeah.
He's 73.
That was the 4th of July an hour ago.
That's Eva.
That's
Eva,
Eva.
well, what can you say about Eva? She's always been a wonderfully charitable person,
Hard worker.
hard worker, good, but wonderfully constant, you know, to think, you know, through lots of trouble. Greg, of course, hasn't been the easiest person in the world. He's, in lots of respects, Kathy's the same, but she's been a wonderfully steadfast, strong and wonderful character. Wonderful character. I have a lot of love for Eva. Where the others I'd put a question mark over. You know, I wouldn't say that I have a great deal of affection for them. But Eva I do. I keep in touch with Eva constantly because I admire her tremendously for what she's done. And she's a pleasant, nice character, and she's my sister, and we haven't got too many of us left. That's the point, you see. The point is there's only 4 of us left now. And so I keep in touch with Eva, but I have always admired her. You know, we have never had any differences at all, Eva and And although
No, she's been a real saint either.
pardon,
She's been a real saint.
she has a strong character without any embellishments, you know. She's just good, being good and solid, and you know, to think of what she has done for Matt over the year, absolutely heroic, absolutely heroic. I don't know of anybody who just had the strength of character to do it. I don't really know
Mm.
anybody.
Mm.
I don't know of anybody who really
And
would.
why do you think she married him? What attracted her
I
to
should
him?
be in love with him, and she still is. She still loves him. She
Thinks
thinks
the
he's
world of
wonderful.
him.
Mm. Yeah,
She thinks he's wonderful.
I'd
She
agree with that.
really do. She really thinks Matt's still wonderful.
Mm.
She will say that quite openly. Yes, she loves him.
Mm.
She loves him, and you know, this is the funny thing about it. I didn't really see past when I was talking about myself, about my return from overseas. You know, I returned from before Jack Henry, and I was telling you that I fell in love with Lily Henry. Now,
Mm.
Lily Henry's relations were absolutely as violently anti-Catholic as anybody I've ever known. In fact, when they realised that I was serious with Lily, they demanded that I cut it off. You don't watch it, you don't, get out of it. And they called me together one night, and Lily was at the time only 19, and pretty timid and, you know,
How old were
not
you?
very worldly. Girl, I was 29,
Mm.
29 years old. I've been nearly 10 years older than Lily. And I was called into the royal presence, and there in the kitchen at their home in Francis Street, Heidelberg, there were about 16 people, in-laws, outlaws, the lot.
Right, all for
And all
For one
ready
reason.
to pounce on me, yes, and tell
This
me
was
I
the
wasn't
meeting.
acceptable, yes, this was the meeting, and I was summoned. And I went over, and they were into me. They knew Catholics, and they were this and that, and the nuns and the priests slept together, and we know this and we know that, and eventually I'm answering all the questions fairly, you know, balanced, and then a brother-in-law who was the most ignorant of the lot, and he said to me, you can't tell me anything about Catholics. He said, I lived with a bloke for 2 years, and he said he was a Catholic, and he told me all about them. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. I said, you insufferable bastard, Bill. I said, not even I, after 33 years in the church, wouldn't make that boast that I know everything, and the Pope of Rome wouldn't even make it. But you, bloody, brainy bastard that you are, and I used the expression, it was never used in those days, oh no, and Mummy was agape, and I said, but you, Bill, you'd know everything. I said, look, I turned to Lily, and she's standing beside me. I said to Lily, look, Lily. Now, when I proposed to Lily, the first time, she said, I would not marry a Catholic who's the last person in the world. I said, why, Lily? What do you know about Catholics? She said, I know nothing, and I wish to know nothing. That was the atmosphere. So I said turned to Lily then, and I said to her, what do you want, Lily? Do you want this, or do you want me? We can't have us both. I said, what do you want? You just hang it here. I said, it's good night, everybody. Good night and goodbye. That's it. Finish. Now, when I proposed to Lily and she said that, I said, do you mean that finally? And she said, yes. I said, okay, I mean this finally. Good night and goodbye. I'll be seeing you again. Off I went. She rang me later. I didn't get in touch with her, no intention of getting in touch with her. But the family, that's what I said, I walked out of the family, then I sent her to Adelaide for 12 months to get away from me. Sent her to live in Adelaide. So I didn't have anything to do with her. I didn't communicate with her, and started to go with another girl, as a matter of fact. And then while I was in Heidelberg Hospital, at the end of a 10-month stay in Heidelberg, and she knew I was there, and I received a letter from her in Heidelberg. She's telling me that she was coming over on holidays to her brother's wedding, the chap I was in prison of war with. I didn't get an invitation to it, and said,
Was he the one that was... who was the one that... what was his name?
No,
Jack.
Jack.
Jack
Jack,
Hammond.
you know,
Yeah.
yes.
So what was his relationship with you? How did you get on with Jack?
Well, I always thought I got on well with him, and I always did. As prisoners of war, and in our army days we got on particularly well. As a matter of fact, people used to think we were brothers. We were very, very close. But when he came home, he sided against me with his relations, especially his mother. Didn't come to my wedding, didn't go, sat outside in a car with his mother. And really, my relationship with him deteriorated from then. Really, it's never really been regained at all, my friendship with him.
Okay, so
Then,
going back, so Lily wrote you the letter.
the letter, and invited me, and I wrote her back a letter, and strangely enough, I can't know where it is now, but I had retained it until a few years ago. I can't really understand where it was, but I wrote back the letter saying that I said, I noticed that you have not mentioned religion in your letter at all, and so obviously this has no meaning for you. I said, well, it has a lot of meaning for me, and so I suggest we don't follow. And she wrote back again and said, I have been reading and thinking a lot about it, and my ideas have changed completely, and you will find that if you meet me again. So I said, all right, on that basis I'll meet you. So I came back, and the family of course realised the inevitability of it then. We became engaged, and we were to be married, and I had a bleed, another big bleed, and 3 days before we were married, I finished up in Heidelberg Hospital. And eventually we were to be married 25th October 1949, and on the fortnight before, she said to me as I was going home from, we used to meet at Preston and go to the pictures there, Lil would go home to Heidelberg, I would go on the bus to Pascoe Vale, and she said to me, I have some news for you. I said, what is it? And she said, I'm entering the church on Saturday morning. And I said, well, you're bloody life, you're not doing that. I said, let the future take care of that. She said, too late now. She said, I've made arrangements with Father Broderick. And I said, but what has caused this sudden change? She said, it's not nearly as sudden as you think it is. She said, but I am there if you want to be there on Saturday morning. So I was there on Saturday morning, and she was received into the church and went through the whole lot, received the first communion and all that kind of business. And so I said to her, now do you remember you're a Catholic, you've got 2 Sundays to go before we're married. What are you going to do? And she said, what do you mean? I said, what about the family? What are you going to do on Sunday morning? Get up, go to Mass? She said, I certainly am. I said, what are you going to say to your family? And she said, I'm going to say I'm a Catholic now, I'm going to Mass.
So this
was
is all inherited from that's all the Irish background, isn't it? Really.
Well, it wasn't on my part, of course.
No, but I mean the anti
Catholic.
Catholicism and
Oh,
all that.
Yeah, strangely enough, they had relations back that were Catholics. This was a funny thing.
So how was your relationship with her family after you were married?
Wonderful.
So what were they?
After 3 months, they were nothing, you see, and that's what I said. I wouldn't mind if you had some kind of religion yourself, but I said, you've got nothing. You've got nothing at all. Oh, I let them have it, of course.
Just bigots.
That's only Jimmy George could.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't pull the punches, and I never did. And of course, I never deviated. There was never a time when I thought, well, can I come to some arrangement where, you know, I might drift out and drift back again later in life. I never even thought of it. As you come my way. When I wrote over to her the second time to tell her, yes, I would meet her, but I said, remember, you will meet me and go with me on my conditions, not anybody else's. I said, I'll make the conditions and I'll call the tunes, and if you don't like it, then you just lump it. But of course she came back and she was quite happy with that. She was quite happy with that arrangement, because really, I learned later she'd been studying the Catholic religion all the time she'd been in Adelaide. She'd been studying.
Well, it is the city of churches.
Yes, that's right enough. But she'd been studying it and she knew.
So,
And now my relationship with them
Yeah.
is still wonderful,
Right.
wonderful. As good as the relationship with my own family, maybe in certain respects better.
What do you mean your own family?
My own immediate, Bill down and all,
All right.
you know. A very, very wonderful family they are.
Right.
Very wonderful. Now, when Lily died, before Lily died, while she was that last 2 years, when Lily lived, I nursed her, as you know, almost every day. I even went into Peter Max Hospital at Stade.
Mm.
They said to me, we won't separate you, and they gave us special rooms, and I used to sleep beside her of the night to the day she died. I was with her when she died. And that sister who had been so terribly bitter, Ida, said to me, isn't it glorious to see the faith that she's got? That's the thing that carries her through and gives her the strength. Wonderful. I used to think to myself, why didn't you say that 33 years ago? Saved a lot of trouble. But the day, 4 days after she died, they called me into that same kitchen where they had all blasted me, and each one of them hugged me. Even the boys hugged me and kissed me, and they all, each apologised, not as a room, but each shook me by the hand, hugged me and apologised for ever having done what they did so many years ago. I can remember Alan, one brother, said, what the bloody right had we to enter your life and Lily's life and do what we did? He said, no, I said, look, Alan, forget it. I got her in the finish anyway, didn't I? And he said, well, that's true. But and my relationship was absolutely, has always been wonderful. Yeah.
No, it's terrific.
That's
A happy ending after 33 years.
That's right. But I had a good end, I had a good relationship
Right.
with them.
Gee,
Except for the mother.
Right. The mother. What, you never cracked
Well,
the...
no, I never was anything else but good to her, and the only home in which she stayed, outside of her own home in Francis Street, Heidelberg, was in our home. But I never had any regard for her at all.
You never had any...
I had never had the slightest regard for her.
All right. And what about her for you? No?
Pardon? She probably thought I was quite adequate, you know. After all it's said and done, we were tremendously happy together.
And so then, and your children? Chrissy? No, Damien?
Damien first. When Damien was born, the family were Chrissy, Lily's family, and when I say family, I mean the mother and the sister, sisters and an elder brother. They were very cool. The younger ones were all quite friendly and had come down to stay with us at Colac. I was very friendly with them, but the elder ones not so friendly at all. In fact, the brother really, he for years and years it lasted with him.
Is this Jack?
That was Roy, the oldest one of them.
The bigot.
Yes, the bigot. He was a real bigot, and he stayed so, I think, until the day he died. So my relationship with him was always very cursory.
Okay, on the, you were going to say before you got some general questions?
Yeah, questions.
Because we're running out of time.
Questions.
Yeah. Now your family, I'm just sort of running through.
Chrissy
So
and Damien.
So there's Damien.
Yes.
And when was he born? 51 or
Born
52?
52. 50. We were married in 1949. Damien was born in 52 with Colac.
At Colac?
Colac, yes.
What were you doing at Colac? In the SEC?
I was in the SEC, and I was told to get out of the accounting profession. And when I got out of it, when I had joined the SEC, they told me to get to the country, go to the country.
Right.
So I went, Lily and I went to stay for a fortnight at Colac, And then if we didn't like it, we were going to go to Benalla because they were the two big centres and we were anxious to go to. So we settled for Colac. And
Right.
Damien was born there, Chrissy was born there.
And so Damien now is a wanderer?
Our wanderer, you'd say, well, he's a
He's a wanderer.
he's got a job, interesting job, one that he likes very much. He is a maintenance engineer in the mines in Western Australia. So he really is based in Perth, and he is sent all over Western Australia and the Northern Territory, maintaining the big machinery in the mines.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, very happy doing it.
So he's got how many children? He was
He's
married.
had 2 children and is divorced, and his wife is, well, she's not remarried, she's living with some bloke up in Queensland. Damien has never remarried.
Mm-hmm. But he had a girl at Chrissy's wedding, didn't he? An Aboriginal girl?
Yes. She wasn't she?
Mary.
Thursday Island.
Mary.
Yeah.
Mm.
Mary.
And how long's he been
He
with
said
her?
he didn't marry again.
No, he didn't marry her.
I don't think so. But Chrissy thinks she's a world of her. She thinks she's a lovely person. I didn't really have a great deal to do with her. I hardly met her.
Yeah, she was a nice girl, as I remember at
Well, you're a racist, so you wouldn't have had anything to do with it.
No, I certainly wouldn't be a racist. I always said that if a Chinese man came and asked for Chrissy's hand, I'd be only too happy. I like the Chinese people very much.
But don't you like the Italians?
I like the...
What about the Greeks?
No, I don't particularly
No,
like the
they're
Greeks.
rude people.
Don't particularly like the
All right.
Greeks.
So Chrissy,
Chrissy had 4 children. She had 3 boys by her first husband, Peter, and then after her marriage broke up, she remarried and she has a daughter by her second husband. She had a little daughter,
Chloe.
Chloe. So she has 4 children, Chrissy.
How old's Chloe?
Chloe was...
She'll be 2 in September.
Oh, right.
Peter is next.
Peter is next, and Peter is I don't know what how they classify him, but he worked for the chap that committed suicide. He still does. You know the chap that wrote Pogden.
Oh, Pogden. Oh, did he?
Pogden,
Yes.
yeah.
He works for
Floyd.
that
Floyd.
firm,
Pogden.
and
Podger
He,
or something they call him.
that bloke.
Podgornik.
Pogden, yes. Well, they bloke. What was the name? What was the capacity of the bloke that was at his wedding with him?
He was his manager,
He said to
managed
me
his jobs.
he would be the best worker I've ever experienced in my life. He said you could say to him, you could bring him up at 7 o'clock at night, say, be at Wangaratta at 2 o'clock in the morning, and he'd be there. And he said Peter never let him down. And they gave him
Ford Utilities. No,
well,
that's
for a
that's
direct
not-
wedding present, what didn't they give him $1,500, didn't they?
that was a wedding present.
Wedding present.
for the
and then they
Christmas
gave him a car,
I gave him
a
the
big
car.
truck,
It's a
for
big
his sole
Ford.
use. And that's what
It's a
Peter
bit like a station wagon, but it's not.
It's an F100.
stated.
Most probably.
He
Could be.
stated Peter would never study as a child, and yet he was most intelligent of the lot. He wouldn't study. I can remember a Spanish, like he was a great artist, Peter. He was as good an artist. He was good enough at 15 years of age to, and this was the opinion of his art teachers at school. He was good enough at 15 years of age to take a place in the Walt Disney Studios. He said he was a very gifted and could have been a top-line commercial artist. And some of his work around, absolutely incredible. He could drive all the Disney characters but never copy them. He just do them. You wouldn't have to have a copy of them and say, he just does them and you'd swear that Walt Disney had done them. He's a marvellous artist, but I can remember this Spanish bloke saying when he determined he was going to leave school, he said, I pray you, Peter, don't leave school. He said, you've got a wonderful future, don't leave school, Peter, with too much. And he was a difficult kid for years. Now he says to me, Dad, how the heck did you ever put up with me? And I said, it was only with extreme difficulty, Peter.
Mm.
And he got a tattoo at one time, and he knew I hated them. He got them. I went home one night, and there was tense, or you could feel it in the air. And I sat down at the head of the table, that's my wound, and I said, things don't seem to be normal. I said, why is everybody so tense and silent? All of a sudden I saw the tattoo. I said to Peter, get out of this place. I said, you did that just to hurt me. So I said, get out. Because everybody's crying, and Chrissy's crying, and Mother's crying. I said, just get out, make your way elsewhere. I said, this will always be your home if you want to come home and behave yourself. But I said, just get out now, I couldn't be hurt now. So Peter went off,
And how old was he then?
he was 17. And so he went off, and then later he came back, and he was a different Peter altogether. He changed his mind, and he was studying, and he realised his father was not a dill, and he was a model, and he has been ever since. He's been a model person. He studied, and he studied it tremendously. To be thinking how often you told me to do my study. Now I'm paying for the very study I lost, but he studied, and I don't know what his qualification. He's still studying. Chrissy told me the other day he was doing some kind of course.
Yes, he's doing welding.
But he's a pilot, you know. And he said,
What were you saying? You don't smoke?
no, so I ended up in. I was the only group.
There it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
I thought to myself when they see that back in Australia, I was the only one of the group that didn't smoke.
How come Glen Iris, Victoria? Where were you living in Glen Iris?
Mother was living at.
In Malvern.
Malvern, yes, in Malvern. She was living there at
Forest Street.
at what's on High Street, or she lived White Street or somewhere.
Oh, White Street.
Yeah, I think, but she was living there.
She was
That
living with
my address. See, we had left
Mum,
there.
that's right.
And I
It
don't.
was Glen Iris then, you're
It was
right.
Glen Irish.
White
yes.
Street,
Yes.
she was living with Mum and
And
Dad.
the strange part of it is this was a girl, she was
Virginia Hoban.
Virginia Hoban
Mm.
was a relation of the people who had the cyclone, fencing crowd.
Oh, right.
Evan Chambers, I thought it was. She was
Sure.
related to anyway. She said, no, I want you to smoke it. And I was the only non-smoker, so I just lit it up, and that was it. But as soon as she took the photo, that was the finish of that. But people saw it back home, and you took on smoking, but I never smoked a cigarette.
Elizabeth, we didn't cover Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Elizabeth left school. She got her, what do you call them?
Leaving.
At the time, pardon,
Leaving certificate.
And she always wanted to be a school teacher, but she got a job at the bank, and Commonwealth Bank, and she was working at Commonwealth Bank, and she wanted to make application to enter teachers college, and I was against it because there was a recession on at the time, and I didn't think it was quite the thing to do. Lily supported her on the basis that Lily was kept by her mother in a job she hated for 2 years, and eventually she got into taxation. And Lily said, no, I wouldn't have Elizabeth do that, so I said, okay, if you want to do that, you go and do it. So Elizabeth went into teachers college, and then she went to uni, and she's still studying hard, and she's been a teacher for 13 years, and she's I think she might be leaving at the end of the year to become doctor of
Child
child
psychologist.
psychology. So that's what she studies, and that's what she loves children.
Mm.
And she,
And
as you know, went with.
Do you
Tim
think
for-
that you were wrong in, in
Yes.
even sort of contemplating that?
Yes.
Now, what about with Chrissy? Chrissy always wanted to be a nurse, but you said that she,
No. I didn't say she couldn't be a nurse at all. I don't know, because she wanted to be a nurse, and
well, Chrissy told me that she always wanted to be a nurse, and you said that she was too good to be a nurse.
I have no recollection of ever going against her as far as nursing is concerned. I'd love to have seen her as a nurse.
Yeah, that's interesting. I
Yes,
mean, just from me
it's-
sort of talking to Chrissy in recent
Go
years,
on, you would glean that. No, I would love Chrissy to have been a nurse. Yes, I
Chrissy
would.
sort of has the impression that you expected a lot more of your kids than they
Than I
have.
got.
Yeah.
No, well, Chrissy, no.
Do you think that that's a fair
No,
comment?
yeah, no, I don't think it's a fair comment at all.
Mm.
Because I always wanted my children to be happy, and that's all.
Mm.
I didn't care whether they were rubbish men or whether they were lawyers. I had no ambitions whatever for any of my children.
Mm. Yeah, well, it's funny. I mean, I never
They were-
thought that. Must admit, I was surprised
No,
when Chrissy sort of
no,
said
not,
that to me.
not me and not their mother. I can honestly say that I never had any ambitions for my children other than to be happily working and happy in life. But I never had any vision. The idea of them being professional people or, big shots,
Mm.
see, I don't boast about the children. Well, I don't boast. My grandchildren are just kids. They're grandchildren. Now, my grandchildren, Lee, my grandson, Lee, that's Chrissy's son. Now, Lee, at about 7 years of age, his father, as you know, was in the electrical business, and he kind of got them a computer game. Now, the computer game was some kind of game in which you built up points, and if you got to 45,000 points, you were a genius. And you took a picture of the film, and you sent it to Sydney, and Sydney would send you back a certificate asserting that you were a far superior intellect and all this kind of rubbish, and 45,000. Now, Lee went up to 75,000. And Peter took the picture and sent it to Sydney. And there was a Japanese man from Japan, and there was the Ted bloke from what's name? Impossible, I said. Impossible, don't believe it. How did you work the thing? They want to know. It was very important for them to know
Mm.
how they'd worked the thing to get 75,000 on the chart, because the whole thing fell in a heap if that was the case. So they came over, said it's true, and he told the retrovision people, the bloke that was his boss, Alan, in the retrovision branch, said, and he wrote up and said, yes, it is true. It is true. Alan wrote over, so they came over to Chrissy's place. And they said, right, they set the whole thing up, and there was this kid, Lee, and he's going on merrily, and they start to engage him in conversation to divert him. But he wasn't going to be diverted. He was answering their questions and going back to the bloody thing, and he got up to 84,000. And he was never beaten.
Mm.
He was never beaten. He used to go up and at the start, Chris was very proud of him. But then he used to gripe her because he used to boast about it. And he was like those blokes in the what do you call it, the chess,
Mm.
who could beat 30 people standing around the table, and he'd just go around one man and he'd beat the lot of them.
Mm.
And that's how this kid was with adults, Now, he's a very ordinary brain, I wouldn't say. You would never think that he's a nice kid.
Which
Nice
one's Lee?
kid.
Is he the
Lee
eldest
is
one?
the youngest.
The youngest, who's
boy.
the dark hair.
So there's the, no, he's a
No,
fair
he's
haired
fair
one.
haired.
And there's
Oh, yeah,
Paul
okay.
is the dark haired, the eldest
Paul
one.
and what's name? And
So
Paul
Simon
and,
Doug, I think.
and then Simon and Louis.
Mm.
Now that was, as I say, that was an incredible performance.
Mm.
But you know, I would never tell it to anybody.
Mm.
I
Oh,
would
no.
just say, look at how wonderful mine was. I won't have to tell it to anybody. Very few of them know.
I didn't hear
And
a
I
thing,
have
did you,
been-
Kev?
I had been the same with the children. No, I could never say for a second that I put pressure on them to be anything other than what they are.
Mm.
No.
Yeah, I just sort of say it to you because that they feel it.
They or as
Well,
a
Chrissy and Damien, yeah, I reckon Chrissy would speak on behalf of them, which is, I mean, maybe you want to talk to them about it. That's because I must admit I was surprised.
yeah. Well,
But I don't want you to
no.
answer it, and I don't want to sort of talk about
No.
that now. But let's moving on. Moving on in your
Yes,
life, then
yes.
then you've you know, we've sort of, you know, run into each other at all these different funerals, and as
Yes.
I said to you then, they should have been yours, you know, you
Yes.
sort of were,
Yes.
you know.
Well,
And then the next thing, I'm at your wedding, your second wedding, and
yes, you
here's
could
your
work.
lovely wife, and we'll get her over here
Yeah.
for
No,
No, you
prosperity.
don't have to.
Yeah, yeah, come on, Paul,
Hey,
you've got to come.
Pauline.
Oh, come on, Paul.
Because this is the end of it.
Come on, sweetheart.
And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, Paul, and you sit down here.
That's
As
It's you, yeah.
drawing done inside a prison camp. And
okay,
given
Pete, you
by
can talk
Jack
about that in a
Henry.
sec.
Jack Henry gave it to me on my 28th birthday party. Which you will find watching.
Maybe they will.
Yeah, wait a minute, let's just
I don't know.
Right,
concentrate on finishing.
yes.
So then the next thing we run into, or I ran into your wedding.
Yes,
And when was that?
that was 1988.
18.
The 18th of June 1988.
Right, so you just passed 4 years.
3.
Three.
Yeah, just
Three,
past
sorry.
3 years,
Is
yes.
he counting around here?
Jim, I need a calculator on one of these new Fandangle ones. And that's been a great event.
Well,
Very happy one.
Pauline and I were dancing partners, as you can see.
Mhm.
Sweep of those.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of success as competitive dancers. And we won, you'll see 2 of the big trophies there, and they are from Moomba. We won in our class.
Just
we
having a
won
look at the trophies here.
modern and
Sorry,
New Vogue. New Vogue.
trophies.
We got the trophies in that bicentenary year, so they were very special to us. And after that, we danced one more at Aquinas College because we had promised our parish priest to do so, and we won them again at both modern and old times, so that we gave away competitive dancing then.
Jim got sick then.
All
I
right.
got sick.
And do you
That's it.
dance in all now?
And we dance
to
twice a
3
week,
nights a
always,
week.
but 3 times sometimes. We
Picture,
travel
yeah.
every Monday to Moorabbin. By the time we reach Moorabbin and back is nearly 90 kilometres, about 87 kilometres.
Mm.
So we do that every Monday night without fail, and on a Saturday we go to various places throughout the metropolitan area, but always on those 2. Recently we also went on a Sunday together, but down to Dingley, but it wasn't our kind of dance. But if we could get a 3rd night somewhere on a Wednesday night, we'd love to.
Somewhere closer to home.
Mm.
Because it's a long way to go, you know.
You never found your way into Thump and Tum or anything?
Into
Thump and Tum? Or Birdies or
Madison.
431?
No, that's too much
Juliana's.
disco for us.
Yeah. So there we are, and we've been very, very happy together. It's been a very, very happy wedding, and really an incredibly happy wedding insofar as we get on so well with the children. All the children get on well together. I get on very well with all Pauline's family, her brothers and her sisters and her.
And that's a miracle in
in-laws.
itself, isn't it?
It is.
Because you're just a...
It is. It is.
Which,
It's a tribute.
whereabouts
It's really a tribute to them not to move.
That's what I was going to say.
Whereabouts were you, do you hail from, as far as,
Well, I was born in Woomling up in the Mallee, but then we came to Melbourne to live.
whereabouts in Melbourne?
Well, my mother and father had a baker's business in North Fitzroy,
Oh, right.
and from there, Mum got sick and we went to Northcote, and she died not long after we went to Northcote.
Because you seem to know a fair bit about the Pascoe Vale area and the, well,
Well, we lived over that side of the
Yeah.
river also. My eldest sister still lives in Thornbury.
Right.
She's
Well-
84.
And it is a strange thing that although we didn't know one another in 1982, there was only a matter of a few days between the date of Lily's death and the date of Paulie's husband, Bernard. There were only a few days difference.
Both died of cancer.
And as far as their age is concerned, they're much within, was it 9 months or something?
Lily, well, I was born in
Lily.
June, she was born in October, she's a bit older than I.
She's the previous October, and so the same difference. And the Bernard.
And what date in June are you?
wow. The Junes had
So
Oh.
we've got the history there on film of the Georges, and especially the life of one James Lloyd George.
But my
Only I used to go cook at you about scaring hell out of her or something in the
what was that?
Eileen. I think you used to. Was it you who used to get dressed
Bill.
up in the or Bill with the sheets and scare her?
No.
In
No,
No,
Cape-
because you used to.
It must have been Bill.
No, it was Jimmy, I think.
No, Jimmy would never do that. No.
Jimmy
fooled
was
around.
frightened of the
Jimmy
dark.
wasn't, because I was too frightened myself.
Well,
I would never frighten anybody.
Auntie Eileen said a number of things. One was that the girls used to have to go to bed, and it must have been a Victorian house because it had the hallway and the curtain, halfway down the hall. And Molly, because she was the eldest, she always had to lead and walk up the
With a candle,
hallway with the
would be.
candle.
Yes.
And they'd all sort of creep behind because they were all sort of it was in darkness and they were all a bit wary of the dark. And she said that the boys were waiting in wait for them behind the curtains and jump out and scare them. And Molly let the candle go, or the curtain got on fire.
Oh yes.
And, they all said it was Jimmy or it was Billy or, whoever blamed one of you.
Yes.
It was Auntie Eileen, this is one of her stories. And, of course, Grandma Geordie said, what are you stupid girls doing? What are you doing? She said, it wasn't us, it was Jimmy, or Billy or whatever. And said, nonsense. And, then they went into your room where you were. And here you were, looked like little angels, supposedly sound asleep. And
That sounds like me. That sounds like.
and the other thing was that you used to have you used to say the rosary in the kitchen every night.
Yes, exactly.
And Auntie Eileen said that she was always a bit of a giggler,
Yes, that's right.
and you would stand behind her, or and go. And she'd start giggling.
Yes. That is
And
right. that is. I admit to that.
and so she'd always be sent out on the back veranda.
Yes.
Can we have
In
a
the dark.
sample of that?
That was what she wanted to do. She'd be sent out because she didn't like the rosary. She didn't add that though. She wouldn't have added that.
Well, why spoil a good story with the truth? But all right. Any other sort of things you've got to
Dad?
yeah, before we close off on this eventful life
You must remember, this is only, of course, my
interpretation.
impression of the family. They would probably have different ideas and different about me, for instance.
Oh, look, that's right.
Ag's still up waiting for us. We won't be too. We'll be around at Ag's place in half an hour's time, Jim. We've got to get her version.
It'll be like sort of on the documentary. All right. Well, thanks for that, Jim and Pauline.
Take a photo of this, kid. This is absolutely... Grab the camera.
All right.
This is fantastic.
But now, what about...
Well, wait a minute. Come up here.
That's his
Look, have a look at
his
this.
birthday card to me.
Have a look at this. That. Look at the detail on that. Look at the design. Isn't it fantastic?
Yeah,
Jack Henry
beautiful.
didn't do it though.
Now, 36 Stalag 344 Gepruft. That means censored. So it's when I came out,
right.
but they stamped that. But they're
I can't do it.
Who did? Are you saying Jack? Did Jack drew the drawing?
No. He's a professional English artist that did also these.
There it is.
But that's me, and there's the badge and Jimmy. Best wishes on your 28th birthday from Jack. Or who's Zoo? Now these are the Griff Hound, you
So
see.
you'll put it in the light.
Yeah. The Griff Hound. Bullshitis vulgaris. Owing to its activities in all kinds of weather, it is often to be found suffering from rheumatism. And there was a going around the camp, all kinds of rumours, you know. I would be one of the specialists. I used to sit on a seat and I'd call somebody and say, Trabucca's fallen, do you hear it? 40,000 prisoners gone. And of course, I would wait there until they came back to tell me their story, but it was never 40,000, it was all about 60 or 70, it grew all the time. and I tell you, one bloke, I told him a rumour, and when he found it was not true, he never spoke to me again. Never spoke to me again. And he left the ship when I came home from Port Melbourne, and he turned his back on me, and I knew him quite well in Heidelberg, but he never spoke to me again, never forgave me for that dreadful thing. That was the one of them taken in Germany.
He's been here so long.
The rest of them were all his...
He's been
He just
here so
doesn't
long.
give a damn.
He just doesn't. He just don't give a damn.
Oh yes, that...
Right, moving right along.
Amber Hawk.
And these
This
are all
one.
These are all originals.
Oh yes, they're all originals. I used to pay all my cigarettes over there, all my ration of cigarettes I used to pay for these. 150 cigarettes, 3 tins of 50 each.
Jimmy, these should be framed and hung.
Yeah, I know they should. I
You've
should.
got them all rolled up for.
Well, this is what I brought them out of a prisoner of war camp when. Benches, tins.
Will they go? Do you think? Would you leave them to the war?
Yes. So they want me to leave them to the war museum in
Canberra?
Canberra.
Oh, it'd be fantastic.
Yes.
That's exactly.
I think I might do.
Donated by.
I really should take them to somebody who can clean them off and frame them properly, though.
But I'd let them do it.
Let them do it, Jim.
Oh yes.
I'll
we'll
make
do
sure
that
they
too.
get them.
But they're very, very clever, aren't they?
Here's the last
This is
one.
The last one.
Fabulous.
This was a chap now that in a prisoner of war camp. We had people, strangely enough, who would never wash once they were taken prisoner. They were only interested in washing. So we used to demand they'd go to a special hut. And these are the people. They'd go, I'll tell you who was one. Do you remember Jeff Cork?
Yeah.
Well, his
King
brother.
of the Kids.
His brother was with us.
Oh, truly?
Yes, Corky was with us, and he was the one, he never washed his clothes, nor himself, from the day he was taken prisoner of war to the day he was released. But Bronchiosaurus, they used to put them in a special hut, so they could stink away there. And this is what they'd call them, you see, they'd go down to what we called the market. So when you were issued with a food parcel, they used to dash off to the market and save them for cigarettes. So this supposedly extinct mammal is still to be found in this camp and can be easily identified by its queer appearance. Characteristics: thick-skinned, very pale coat with dark patches behind the ears and around the neck. Main feature, long tail of woe. Habits: Saturday to Friday. semi-static, very sluggish with just sufficient strength to totter out on the sick parade. This being a daily pilgrimage to the shrine of St. M.O., a medical officer, being duly rewarded with a medical parcel. Habits continued, Fridays only, that was when they got the parcel. On receipt of medical parcel, galvanised into action, can be seen hurtling towards the market in vast herds, flocks or schools. They usually end the day, the big day, with a smoking concert when the following songs are sung with gusto. Malinger a little longer with me, We Are the Ovaltinis, the melody, M-A-L-A-D-Y, lingers on, finally winding up with a solemn toast to the cause. Sports and recreation and hobbies, horizontalism or hibernation. Anyone interested in this strange beast should visit the Bronchiosaurus wing at the Camp Museum, Hut A, where some splendid specimens of fossilised oatmeal, petrified cremolas and terrified jellies are on view daily. But isn't it beautifully done?
So how long would it take for them to do one of those?
I have no idea. I only know that I approached him when I saw the first one and said, what do you want for that? And we came to terms, and it was 150 cigarettes, that one. So, no, it wasn't that one, it was the one on the Greyhound.
Incredible.
And I bought the others, so I think that, you know, I should have them framed, really.
Alright.
I should have had them framed right away.
Oh, we'll get them
But
to do
anyway,
it. At least
that
you've got
was-
them in us.
that was the, what's that? That was,
Don't let that get to
how,
ship that got...
what's your eyesight like?
Yeah,
See
that's
how
good.
beautiful it's printed?
I know.
Beautifully.
Yeah, it is.
Clear as clear. I saw it in a magazine.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, saw it in an Italian magazine. So I bought it
Is it
home.
Kiwi?
And
Right, now what's this, Jim? This one over here that Peter's holding?
this one is a group of us that were in Geelong camp together.
From the back line? Left?
On the back line there's Snowgriffs, who died 2 years ago, Jim George, Gary
Mackeringham.
whatever, he lived at Mildura, but he was he had come home to stay at Moore Street, Coburg quite often. The chap up in the corner was a cousin of Jack Henry's. He died in the last moments of we were in the water. I looked around to see him, and I said to Jack, Lenny has at least made it. He said he couldn't swim a stroke. And when we were taken aboard the Italian motor torpedo, he was missing. He must have relaxed at the last minute and went to the bottom. That chap was never in our unit. He's transferred into another unit. That was the chap that Jack Henry, my future brother-in-law, joined the army with. That bloke there was a sergeant in he is now dead. As a matter of fact, when we were first taken, you know, after the hair cutting incident, we were in a room and the bathroom was that cold that the ice was up on the floor, and we couldn't wash, too cold to wash. And he said one day, I have to go, I'll strip off and wash, I can't stand it any longer. Went in to wash and it completely killed him, ruined him. It was too cold. He just went all of a sudden and went down, and I don't know whether he had a heart attack, but he died.
Yeah.
And that was Jack Henry, that's my brother-in-law.
Here.
Yes. Good looking bloke. He was a real personality, Jack, although, you know, he was a very, very popular man.
Right. It's this one. Good shot, isn't it?
Reluctantly taken on final leave.
Right. Say that again.
I was...
Go back at that last one, Pete.
Yeah, anyway. Let's put that in.
Well, yeah.
The day I arrived in London, that was
Right. Okay.
hat badge, and there was a morning raid, one morning in Crete on the aerodrome there, and I was spotter on the day. In other words, I was plane spotting, and going round and round on a chair like an office chair, and four planes came around the headland, and I had special permission from the army to wear a felt hat because I always got sunburn, instead of a steel helmet. But I'd always have the steel helmet. I had it on the chair, the spotter's chair, and all of a sudden I saw them come around. I yelled to the people on the gun, dived for the gun, and the first bomb they dropped blew the chair to pieces, and of course my hat with it. And they went looking. I hadn't any idea of going looking for the helmet or anything, the badge or anything else, but a chap, the sergeant of the group, he had lost his hat in a similar circumstance, and it was the badge that he had was his father's in the First World War. So we went searching for it, but we never did find his. But we found that one. That was
And that was your one.
So that was mine. So
They
you see
stopped
how
the
the bomb
bleeding,
hit it, and that was it. Now this, what's the
Does it
one?
look, Pete? Hmm.
Well, at Christmas time,
Yeah.
and here's one in 1941, Christmas 1941.
Hmm.
The Pope every Christmas gave every prisoner of war,
Yeah.
irrespective of creed or colour or nationality, gave them a Christmas card each with a little packet of nougat, and that was the one for 1941. Christmas 1941, with ever greater paternal solicitude, we turn our thoughts to each of you who, in your separation from distant homes at this Christmas season, feel very keenly the absence of your loved ones. May our prayerful and affectionate good wishes sweeten the bitterness of that separation and be to you all a source of divine comfort and Christian hope. Pope Pius XII. Now he gave that.
And that's all personally signed, is it?
Yeah, oh no, but he
There was one
gave
that was.
each person
Signed by the Holy Ghost.
he gave each person
Cake.
In,
Jimmy's cake. That he was
Mhm. This was the cake that
he gave
Pope Pius X.
each person in a prison camp one of these and the nougat, but in addition to that, he'd give each Christmas about a dozen
Medals.
there'd be about a dozen medals like that, and also medallions, and also about a dozen stamp albums with all the Vatican stamps back to the first stamp published, and beautifully done with his tiara and the crest on it. They were beautiful, the albums, and in addition he'd give, they were to be raffled, irrespective of creed, they were to be raffled, and then there were 12 piano accordions, the bigger piano accordions, and they were to be given to either people who could play them or people who had the capacity to learn how to play them so that they could entertain all the rest. And we used to give those each year to prisoners in Italian prisoner of war camps.
Oh, was that her?
That was a girl.
Hang on,
Give us a
Ken,
look.
we've got a scoop here.
She was a girl with Gracie Fields. She was very pretty. She was chosen to make the presentation to her. Gracie was a very pretty girl.
That one's the one that we paused there. Is she still alive?
No, I don't know. I couldn't say. No, I don't know.
Okay, she changed her name to Shirley Bassey.
Well, that about wraps it up.
Shirley Beasley. So there you are. And Gracie Fields.
Well, that was fantastic.
Gracie was.
So that's been an education tonight.
Been an education?
An education.
Yes, I suppose so. I suppose, yes. Very
How many
interesting.
tapes are you going to make of that?
Very interesting. You're not going to give a copy to all the family.
This is just a practice. We haven't got the tape in it.
I won't have a friend. I won't have a friend left, will I?
No.
Well,
I wasn't very flattering to
No,
too
they're
many of
hating on
them.
that. Well, that's fair enough.
what comes on?
What?
The final word.
The final word is a good night, fellas. It's 2 o'clock.
Okay. Well, thanks for your hospitality, Pauline, your cakes and your bickies, and
Thank you, Pauline.
Thank you for coming out.
Good on you, son. Good on you.
Overseas to be